Welcome back to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast, a show all about inspiring smart, busy women to put their happiness at the top of their to-do list. Join your host and life coach, Dion Thompson, as she chats with amazing women who have figured out how to make their happiness a priority, and more importantly, what it's really like to go from hot mess to awesomeness. And now, on with the show.
Welcome everyone to the Hot Mess to Awesomeness podcast. I am your host and life coach, Dion Thompson. Oh, love me some midweek dance parties. That was fantastic. I loved everything about
awesome.
that. So my guest Lisa picked, right? And you picked great songs and just that perfect energy. And we were chatting before we hit record about energy and vibe and flow and all of that great stuff. And then throw on your dance songs. I'm like, there we are. This is fabulous. And so thank you, Lisa, for picking such great songs to get us right into what I guarantee is going to be a high energy, fun, fabulous, hot mess to awesomeness conversation. So let me just let everybody know a little bit about how I know you, I guess, more like
Sure.
why I really love you. So we got connected. Yeah. So we got connected through a mutual friend about this amazing virtual conference summit that you are executing like a fiend. I'm really excited about it. And so we had that beautiful chat, and I swear it was like that first second we started talking and it was like, oh, the camera's not working. And we both just started laughing. I'm like, oh, this is my person.
That's
like,
right.
Fantastic. And
It was love at first sight, really.
Yeah.
It really was.
And then it just kept growing from there. The
Mhm.
more that you shared about what you do, and more importantly, why you do it and why you continue to show up for your clients and this community that you're building, this global community of divine spirits, of entrepreneurs who are being led and guided by sort of this higher sense of knowing, which I am a huge fan of. So I'm like uber practical. I'm all about getting shit done, and math is my friend and all of that. And when it comes down to it, at my core, I am completely driven by that knowing, that internal just is voice. And the chance to talk to you about that and to explore that a little bit more, and to know that there's this whole community of people just rocking it, I was just fucking like, yes, please. So
Oh yeah.
so I'm so grateful that we found some time we're very busy women, I get that, to jump on and record this podcast. And I'm excited for my community to learn more about you and what you do and why you do it. And I think there needs to be more of us out in the world having these kinds of conversations, and that energy just needs to keep flowing. So I'm really excited about that.
Sounds great to me.
So Lisa, before we dive in, I just want to share with everybody a little bit about you officially, because of course,
Oh boy.
like I said, I have my opinions and my ideas, and my open heart and all my love. But so Lisa is a mindset coach, author, speaker, and entrepreneur. She has helped thousands of people for over 28 years with transformation to live authentically and build a lifestyle that matches their soul's calling. Her superpower is connection and kryptonite sour cream and onion chips. Oh my God, I didn't even know that. That's exciting, because that's me too. She loves fiercely and is always looking for the next great adventure in her business and in her personal life. Welcome, my soul sister. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much. And what a wonderful introduction. I'm just happy to be here, and I'm just happy to play with you. Like, if you asked me to come and just talk, and we can talk about, your favorite type of furniture, that would be great too. Like, I love your energy, and I'm so blessed that we connected in this way. I'm really happy to be here.
We absolutely can talk about furniture and shoes and food and kids and things, and art and music. And are you familiar with Jason Silva? So Jason Silva is like
sounds familiar,
he's like an internet guy. He did he was a host for a kids sort of science show for a long time, but I mean, I don't know what transformed him, but he is this massive sort of force He is an orator and speaks his mind about all things energy and science and psychedelic drugs and all kinds of things. Anyway, he did a talk that I caught on social media, and it was about brain coupling. And so the idea is literally the physics around the vibration that matches another person's vibration through thought, and as you are having a conversation, you literally link energetically, and as a result can kind of lose space and time. And then all of a sudden you're just like in it, right? And I think we've all, when we start talking about it, people are like, yeah, like I totally vibe with a person, or whatever word you used, you're like, yeah, we were just so connected. I felt like I'd known them forever, all that stuff. Me, love the fact that there's some science behind that. But now I kind of look for it, and I'm really jazzed when it happens, and I'm like, oh, I'm in it. Oh, we're here. Oh, it's exciting. And that is how I feel about you. And even though you're across the border, far, far away, energy can travel the globe, the universe. It doesn't have those limitations.
Yes. Absolutely. So now we're brain couples instead of being like soul sisters or kindred spirits. Like we're brain couples,
right?
Love that.
That's a new thing. I'm writing that down. Brain couples. Awesome.
I get that, and I've had those connections with people. And when you find it, to me, it feels like magic, right? But it's also, to me, it also just warms my heart, and I feel like I've connected with somebody in my soul, and that's what it feels like to me when I talk with you. It's wonderful. It's awesome.
And I think, I mean, with this conversation can go sideways real fast, but I think when people start talking about this, like that soul, the magic, and I'm all about it. I look at that and go, and there's this quantum energy that rests inside of all of that. And not that it's to be explained, but it's more than something that is completely unexplainable or unattainable. That it's, for some people, that idea of magic is just not a thing. But it's not just, it's not Harry Potter. Although if that was real, I'd be really fucking happy. It's grounded in the laws of the universe. And
that's right.
Whether you understand them all because you're not a quantum physicist, or you're just sort of excited by it. I mean, it just is. And so yay.
Yeah.
Brain couples.
Well, I told you that, I don't know, we are going sideways here, but speaking of metaphysics, I'm a huge fan, and I can't even pretend to like speak on this intelligibly. But I read it, I'm studying it, I'm practicing it. It's part of like who I am. And I definitely believe that, we're going to be learning and hearing more about it, and back in the day when I was buying, cars and houses as a single woman, I just remember using that phrase and throwing it around when people were trying to pigeonhole me into like some kind of a female stereotype, like, oh, you're a counselor. Do you work with kids? Like, oh, you're a coach. Oh, you must be a life coach. You help people like organize their life, right? And I would say, oh, no, I'm a metaphysical engineer. And it would like shut them up, and they'd look at me. I'm like, oh, it's like with the brain and the mind, like you wouldn't understand, And it was like my way of like kind of like standing in my power and not wanting to be like labeled. I laugh at it now, but now it's like really a thing. Like, yeah, I'm a metaphysicist,
Yeah, fucking right. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anybody can steal it. That's fine. Like, I think we should just like, I'm sure that there's an actual degree that you would need to have to call yourself that professionally. But I think it's a term we can start using,
I mean, I've always loved the term practitioner or
I like that.
theorist.
Yeah.
Or observer, explorer. All these things are fabulous.
Yeah.
And an enthusiast.
Absolutely. Enthusiast.
Yes, I'm a metaphysics enthusiast. I say that about much of the research that I have sitting over here. So like I'm a positive psychology enthusiast. I'm an epigenetics enthusiast.
Love it.
I'm a art and hand lettering and all things messy enthusiast. And so it's funny because I get really jazzed by stuff and when I find that it almost like melts into me, like it integrates so quickly because it just fucking is. And then I'm like, oh, I need to put this out into the world. I'm like, that's a lot. It's a lot. And so now in some of my communities, I'm like, I'm just going to do some, I called this in my membership group. I have a whole section called cool shit masterclasses. It's just cool shit that I think is interesting. It really doesn't necessarily, I mean, it relates to sparking your creativity and following your fascinations and really aligning with what lights you up by figuring out what that is. But like I have one on worm composting because I think that's just cool. And I want to know more about that. The woman coming to talk about tarot, and I had like I had all kinds of things. And I'm like, I just think it's interesting. So I can't be the only one. Although I can't relay it into like my entire business and be like, I am the blah, 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 enthusiast. Like, people don't want to buy into that.
Title. People would get exhausted reading it. But I love that. Yes. And you can have so many passions. Somebody on my conference was just talking about the phrase Renaissance woman. And I think that's what you're talking about, that we are Renaissance women, that we don't have to master one trade and say, this is who I am. You know, we can say that all of these things is what I am. And I can be passionate about this and I can be passionate about that and incorporate all of those things into my life. And I get to pick and choose what things become what I consider like a career or in my entrepreneurial world. And the rest can just be for fun. Like I do calligraphy, watercolor, stained glass, you know, and I have spaces in my house for all of those things. And my husband says we need a bigger house because we need more space for all of the crafts that you pick up along the way, you know. But they're just so, I'm an enthusiast of all those things. Am I professional in any one of those things? No, like I'm not going to go sell. I guess I could open an Etsy store, but it's not, you know, it's just ways of expressing ourselves.
Do you know what's amazing about this is the embodiment of that practice of just being like, yeah, I'm going to follow this. And it doesn't have to be the thing. We're so, you know, as a generation of women, we're so conditioned that if you're going to do something, it needs to be number one of service to somebody else. That's number one.
Yeah.
And following your creative passions that are artistic and just for you and no one sees, what's the fucking point of that? Right? Like it just became this thing. I remember putting down my sketchbook as a kid and because it didn't serve a purpose. Like I don't remember having that conscious thought, but like that last bit of art, I used to design furniture when I was I say really little. I was a young kid and had this like huge sketchbook of like furniture I wanted to create. I wanted to be a woodworker. I wanted to be super excited about that. But that didn't serve, like it was clear to me that wasn't going to be what I was supposed to do. And ended up following a different path. And the path I took is great. I have a big brain. It works and that's lovely. But to tap back into a creative center, that was huge part of my transformation. I started practicing being creative, set up a little zone in my kitchen with my infant and my toddler who weren't allowed to touch my Crayola markers because I was doing my thing. So I'm so excited to hear that you too are a fascination follower and the like the happy creative, right? The Renaissance woman. Fucking I didn't think there was going to be things that would make me love you more, and then here you are, like 10 minutes in. Fucking fantastic.
Oh, just wait. There's more.
But wait. Oh, good.
The more you get to know people and you really connect, like there are probably, you know, ways that we can each connect with every single person if we learn enough about them, you know, and it could just be that their careers are boring, their tone is boring, their energy is boring, but they love worm composting. Who knew? You know, and you're like, oh, I love worm composting too. Like, oh my God, we're kindred spirits, we're brain couples, you know.
So I'm pretty sure it was Bill Nye that had
Love
said,
him. I do know him.
Yeah, oh, and he had said like everybody knows something you don't. And one of my favorite TED Talks is by a woman named Celeste Headley, and she's an NPR interviewer. And it was about having great conversations. And she had said like everybody has something that I can learn. So if I go into a conversation going, what do you got? What do you do? What's your thing? Which is much different than let me tell you my thing. Right. Although we'll get there.
Yes.
Right. Yes. That happens. But it opens up so many doors, especially for those of us who are intrigued by this idea of just the process of being curious.
Oh gosh,
Like
yes.
that's just it. Like I just love that.
Yeah.
Like, what you got? Tell me more about that. Ooh, that
Yeah.
sounds cool. Like this whole
Yeah.
podcast started because I'm like, ooh, what do you got going on? That sounds interesting.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Exactly. You got it.
So that being said, I'm excited to hear about what you have going on, because of course you are in this well, we're all in the thing on the planet, but you are working towards creating something really fantastic with your conference, your online conference, which is number 2 in you did one last year as well. But
Yes. Mm-hmm.
when I chatted with you earlier, we had talked about a lot of that shouldy stuff, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the stuff you're supposed to do and how it's supposed to work out, and strong, independent women. I'm just gonna do it, yet still kind of inside the lines, right? So
Oh yeah.
we short up against the edge, but still not venturing out too far. But I know that you did. I know that you had that pivotal moment when you're like, nope, there's more to this. There's something
Yeah.
different. I need to be following this path that was kind of being led by your light, that internal knowing. So
Is
is
that
it
what happened? That
that
sounds so much more profound than the actual experience.
the experience is always a freaking mess. That's the whole thing. It's a hot mess. It doesn't feel like this is
I had an
catharsis. I'm
awareness.
having this moment. No, it doesn't fucking feel like that. It feels like a disaster.
Exactly.
Um, but hindsight 2020, the whole thing. So
That's right.
take us back. Let's
Oh my
dive back
God.
into that moment,
Yeah.
and walk us through what that was like.
So I knew you were going to ask this question, and I was thinking, like, how far back do I go? Because, and I'm sure that this is probably very similar to a lot of our journeys, that it didn't start at a specific date of February 2nd of 2020. And that's when I knew that I was going to be this new entrepreneur and I had a clear vision. Like, no, like I want to go back all the way back to when I was young and I was 13 years old and I had a teen line in my bedroom because my mother and father, I'm like 53 years old, okay, soon to be 54. I'm just putting that out there because there were no cell phones, there were no nothing. And I was a chatterbox like since I was born. And I loved talking on the phone, but there was a landline. And there was only one landline in the house. Imagine that, people, like one phone in the house. Not everybody has their own. So my parents were sick and tired of not having use of the phones. They gave my sister and I a teen line. And that opened up a whole new world for me. Like that was like the internet for me. You know what I mean? Because I got to talk with my friends whenever I wanted. But what I recognized is that I was having these kinds of conversations with my friends all the time and tell me more. And those curious conversations. And then they would share like really deep shit with me.
Mm.
And at 13 years old, I suddenly found myself as like the hotline, for suicidal teens and kids who were abused, and they were my friends and my classmates. Like it wasn't like I had a number up and there was no internet, so how could they find me? But I was having these deeper conversations, and I didn't plan it, I didn't invite it, it just kind of happened. But I think just by my nature of being a good listener and loving people so deeply and being so curious, I just fell into that role of being the helper and being the listener because I cared. I was just being a friend. And I think that was like the beginning of my path to being a therapist or a life coach or whatever you want to call it. I had no training. I was 13 freaking years old. You know what I mean? I had no business talking to kids at that time about suicide. Like I could have been in a lot of deep doo-doo had things not gone as they did. But there I was. And for the rest of my life, I'm the person that people go to when they're having difficulties because I care and I listen. And it's really that simple. And then I just realized that you can actually like get a career in this and get paid for it. So I'm like, why not do that? Like people pay you to talk to people. Are you crazy? And I launched into my psychology career. And then, my whole life, all I wanted was to have my little office where I could just sit in my chair. And I just picture myself back in the 80s and the 90s. Therapists had an actual uniform. People might not realize that. Like nurses had like the hat, well, back in the day, right? And the scrubs. Well, therapists had long skirts and like a flouncy top, and they got to sit in lounge chairs or comfy chairs, and rather than the suit and tie. So I like envisioned myself as this really like wise woman with the flowy skirt in a corner office with a window, and like that would be like it. That's like the pinnacle of my career, right? And so I worked and I followed the rules and I did everything I was supposed to do, and I made it. And I finally made it. And I had a lot of bumps on the road in my personal life and professional life and everything. But like I finally reached that point where I'm like, oh my God, now I'm really doing it. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I have my office. I got my dream office, and got to see my dream clients like every day. And people would hand me money, and I'd come home and tell my husband, like, oh my God, somebody else paid me to listen to them. Like, this is nuts. And he's like, Lisa, you have a lot of training. You have a master's degree. You've worked in psych wards. Like, you have the train. I know, but we're just like chilling out and talking, and people are giving me money. Like, this is awesome. And then my life took a lot of other turns. And you and I had this conversation before that when I was in my private practice, I had my son, and I was an older parent. I also went through a divorce, and I'm not going to go into that so much, not that because I need to hide it or anything, but I moved through a divorce when I was 29 into like 30, 31. And it was a pivotal time for me. I had to take 2 jobs. I had to overcome a lot. But all of those things that I had to move through were like I was supported. I had a lot of support around me. Yes, it was difficult emotionally, but I kind of kept the ball rolling. I just kind of pushed through, like I was able to kind of push through it. I made more money. I got help. I sold my house. I bought a condo. I did all of those things, right? And I'm like, okay, I'm resilient, man. Like I thought I was the shit. I'm like, okay, like I'm working 2 jobs. I'm getting through this, and look at me. I'm still put together. Like I knew I was a mess, and to my closest friends, they knew I was an absolute mess. But like I, still kind of kept my shit together and had the outward appearance of she can do so much, right? Like, oh, like I'm sure you've heard that one before. And I just kept plugging along. Well, courageously, I got remarried, scared out of my mind, but I got remarried. And then I ran into infertility issues. Didn't expect that. That kind of knocked me off because I was afraid that I would never have my actual dreams. And yes, I achieved the success in my business, but my true dream was to be married and have children. Like ultimately, at the end of the day, at the end of my life, that would bring the most meaning. And I felt like I was being denied that by having infertility. And it was really, really hard, a very dark part of my life. And the people who knew me the most saw it. But again, I'm trying to hide it and put on the happy counseling face. I'm fine. I've got it all together. And then I was able to get pregnant, and I had big mess. I had to have surgery beforehand. Then I finally had my son at age 39. And even though I was an older woman having him, I still felt kind of young. And I still went back to my office after about 6 months. I went back to my private practice. I'm like, okay, whew, oh, that was a lot. I went through a divorce, went through infertility. I'm going to have to write a book about this one day because that was a lot of shit, and finally I'm on the other side and I have my family, and look, I could do it all. Like I can have my son, I can have my new husband, and I can have my business, and this is going to be an amazing life, And then I made the most critical mistake. And if I can offer this to anyone out there, I said a prayer, but I didn't just say any prayer. I said the prayer that and I'm glad I said it now, but like at the moment, I had no idea what I was doing. Again, no business making this kind of a prayer. I said, I was laying in bed next to my husband. My son is still in a room in a crib. And I'm like, or maybe he was in his own room. I don't know. He was like, I don't know, like a year old. So he's probably in his own room. And I said, I love my life, God. And I love my husband. Thank you for giving me a second chance at love. And thank you for my son and giving me an opportunity to have children. And thank you for everything in my life and my home and everything. But I want more. And I just want a deeper connection with my husband. Like I want to know him on a soul level. We love each other, but I want to know him on a much deeper level. And then about a month later, I conceived my daughter. And my daughter, Heidi, has Down syndrome and a heart defect. that we discovered when she was, when I was 19 weeks pregnant. And they told us that they saw a shadow on her heart. And they told us that her heart defect was so severe that she probably wouldn't live to birth. And that if she did, she'd most likely need, a couple heart surgeries, a couple heart surgeries after she's born. And even then, she may not survive. And so we had to make a decision whether or not we were going to terminate the pregnancy or continue on and face this really long road, knowing that I had like a son at home who was a year and a half at this point. Like, how is it going to impact his life? I knew it was my last shot at a pregnancy. I was 40. And I didn't think that I would be able to handle something if I had lost this child or if anything happened. And I certainly knew that if I have this child, I'm probably going to miss a window of time to try again in a few years, So this was so critical. And my husband and I decided to move forward. And we had our daughter, and she lived to birth. And she was the fattest baby in the ICU, which was awesome. People were like, why is she in there? She was like 8 pounds, 6 ounces, or something like that. Like, she was big. But she turned blue when she was born, and she needed oxygen. And she had her first heart surgery at day 5. And then when she was 9 months old, she went back to have her second series of heart surgeries. And that time period was the time period, like when we talked about, your podcast here, The Hot Mess, that was probably one of the most pivotal, most painful times of my life thus far. And hopefully ever, I'm not making any of those crazy prayers again. But I, during that stay, we were in the hospital for 2 months, and we almost lost our daughter. She almost died many times. And, but before that even happened, back to, like, I had my practice, I had my family and everything. When we got the diagnosis of her heart defect, I realized that I could no longer put on this happy face all the time. Like, I could no longer do it all. I had to make some significant choices about my life. And I could have chosen to terminate the pregnancy, knowing that it was going to be really rough and she probably wouldn't survive, and just continue on and work. But my values and my heart told me no. Trust and move forward. And I did pray. I'm very spiritual. And, I don't know if I call myself super religious because I'm not perfect at going to church all the time, but I'm very spiritual. And I just got this knowing that I should just have this child and play it out, see what happens. And oh my God, I'm so glad I did. But I decided to shut down my practice permanently. And it was hard. I mean, I had to tell all of my clients who I loved that I can't work with them. And they said, well, how about on the side? And I'm like, I can't. Like, I physically had to shut it down and emotionally shut it down. And it was shut down for 5 years. And I focused on my family. My daughter got through that horrendous stay in the hospital by the skin of her teeth, and I say by a miracle, and that's an entire story unto itself. But what I allowed myself to do was to tap into what I needed for my entire life and really weigh out the values of what I wanted to create. And what I wanted to create was a family life where I felt supported and loved, a community that I know I could call on to help myself, my husband, my daughter, my son, my dog, and have that deeper connection and a larger community. And I have to tell you, it was not easy because I was so much a lone wolf. Like, I had always been very independent, and I don't like to ask for help. Like, I had a hard time asking help for babysitting for my son. Like, oh, can you come over? I feel bad for asking, but here I am. I was so vulnerable with my daughter's health crisis that I had no choice. It was sink or swim. If I didn't have help with my son, then I couldn't go to my daughter's bedside in the cardiac ICU. And if I didn't have help with my house or my dog, then I would have lost it all. So it was like the universe saying, okay, Lisa, you are a very strong woman, I'll give you that, but it's time to allow help. It's time to allow others to lift you up and hold you. And I did. And so my daughter has been my inspiration for what's possible when we allow ourselves to be seen, when we allow our vulnerability and what others might see like as weaknesses to be exposed, because it opened me up. It opened me up to the possibilities of what I could create next in every area of my life, in my personal life, in my professional life. And she continues to be an inspiration. By the way, she is alive and well. She is 12 years old. She's going to be 13 years old in April, and it scares the shit out of me because she's like a teenager now. Like, she's awesome. And when she was 3.5, she had her last, most recent open heart surgery, and they kind of rebuilt her heart. They used Dacron and Gore-Tex to build the walls of her heart because all the blood was flowing, and they used her tissue to build a new valve. Like, it was like something in a sci-fi movie if you were to understand the mechanics of what happened. But how it affected her, she got off oxygen. She got out of a wheelchair, learned how to walk in about 6 months after we got done that surgery. And she is a powerhouse. We call her the Energizer Bunny, and she's fabulous. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm talking. Cut me off, Dion, because I can go on. But I think when you asked that question about, what were the things that kind of happened that kind of launched me into this next era, that's the whole journey. And then that most recent thing with my daughter, I have not ever gone back to working outside of the home. And I made that decision because I so valued the time that I had with her and with my son that I wanted to be available to them. And when they come home from school, I'm here. And when they go off to school, I'm here. And I'm not working nights and weekends. And more than that, I recognized that my family was a higher priority than my career. However, I can't not work. Because, like we were talking about, as a Renaissance woman, or whatever you want to say, like, I can't sit still. Like, my husband will put on Hallmark movies. Like, he's the romantic, right? He'll put on Hallmark movies after, like, I wash, give my daughter a bath or something. And I come downstairs, I'm like, what are you watching? He's like, I'm watching a Hallmark. Come sit with me. And I'm like, oh, okay, I will. And I'm like, but I want to be doing a lot, and it's not out of and I swear to God, like, people say, oh, you're avoiding things and stuff. Like, it's like, I have this creative energy flowing through me all of the time. And I do have to kind of force myself to slow down and be present and all that jazz. But by moving into that new space of how am I going to be a mom and a business owner and do it in a way that resonates with my soul, where I don't have to deny either part of myself, that I don't have to pick and choose, but I might have to pick and choose the way I do it. And in different seasons, I have different ways of being. And so during those 5 years when I was home and not working at all, I was in a season of being there for my daughter and knowing her meds and being up around the clock every 2 hours, giving the meds and understanding her medical condition and her emotional needs. And I was present, and I won't trade that. I mean, people will be like, oh my God, if you had worked, you could have saved so much more, but I wouldn't trade that time for anything,
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
There's so many little inlets. I'm like, oh, that, that. I can vividly envision the doing, the going, the strive and go and be and do, and being someone who's a consummate doer. There's always something that's going on and happening, and I'm in charge of it. And so I can see, like you said, that lone wolf. I'm like, yeah, like this is mine. I've got this. I do this. This is, and this is how it's done way. And then stepping into a space where you have to surrender to the whatever.
Yeah.
Right. And what I heard in your story, which I think is so powerful, so many pieces are so powerful, but what I heard was one of the things that made it possible for you to make the shift. Number one, you just do, and you have to, and we're talking about other humans and lives here, but to make the shift in your mind and energetically to then be okay, like to be comfortable and feel confident that what you're doing is the right thing for you, is it sounded to me like you really connected to that higher vision, that higher version of you that you
Yeah.
had mentioned about alignment to your values. And I look at that, I look at the three aspects of experience: the why, the how, and the what. And so many of us get very caught up in the what, and we then
Yes.
self-define around the
Yeah.
what do you do, you know, and everything
Mhm.
is attached to what I do.
Oh
and
yeah.
and then when things like global pandemic happen, and what you do isn't fucking what you do anymore because you
Yeah.
can't do it that way, you people who are very, very committed to the what can get easily derailed if they can't chunk up to something higher. So the next level up is the how. Okay,
Yeah.
so you know, it's different what's. So you know, you're still a therapist, okay, but not in an office doing the thing, sitting in the long flowy skirt and the frilly shirt and the whole
Yeah.
comfy
Yeah. Yeah.
chair. That, you know, how you do it has shifted. Okay, so that's fine. And the even the bigger chunk up is why.
Yeah.
And so then it becomes being at work or being at home. It's the why that matters. It's not
Yeah.
what I'm doing, it's why I'm doing it. So you know, when you had mentioned early in your story about, yes, you were driven by your career and the passions that lie inside of that, you had a knowing that that was all well and good and kept you busy, kept you going, but what you really wanted was that connection and family. And
Yeah.
you know, it when we go way up to those whys, it makes the yeses and the nos a lot easier.
Oh yeah. Piece of cake. Yeah.
So I'm interested in what it is that you connected to, so that you could more easily align with your why, right? Because the what's are changing, and that can be really jarring, especially when, you know, there's a lot of unknowns, and you know, there's control is like not yours. And
Mhm.
how did you stay grounded in those early days and moving through? How did you stay connected to your why while still staying with your feet planted on the ground in real life?
I get that. And my answer is really, really simple. My faith. My
Mm,
faith. Since I was a little girl, I've always had a very strong sense of spirituality, as I shared. And it's always easier to tap into my faith when I'm like in need, you know, because it's easy to be dropped to my knees and going like, okay, help, okay, help. But I go there too when I want inspiration and I'm bored and I want more. Like I go to my faith for that as well. And, you know, during the times when I knew things were happening, oh my gosh, did I scream up at the sky or wherever, you know, like, why is this happening to me? I asked all those questions and I wanted that grounding. I wanted that sense of security. And,
mm,
you know, this is a huge word because this has come up a lot in the pandemic, you know, like people are like, oh my gosh, everything's so uncertain. I'm like, when was anything ever certain in the first place? When
right.
did you really truly have security all this time, or was it just an illusion? And when anybody has any trauma happen to them, and it could be something as simple as getting, you know, like a, you know, fender bender in your car or a major health issue, you know, we ask those questions like, why is this happening to me? But the truth is that things are happening to people all the time. You know, like why did you expect to never get into a car accident or never have a health problem? Like that's ridiculous. You know, the chances of you having something like that happen are higher. But finding the grounding is so key, because I know that things like that, life is going to go sideways and that I'm going to get something else that's going to happen that's going to knock me off my feet. And how do I manage those times? And I think the first thing is my faith. But the second thing is community and connection and not lone wolfing it. Because during those times, it wasn't like I was sitting in my living room floor with my legs crossed, you know, saying Om or saying a special prayer that the magic would come down from the heavens. Like usually it looked like me praying like, God help me, God help me. Oh, somebody just called me. Oh my gosh, it's my best friend. How did she know? How did
Right.
she know to call me just now? And then I'm like, oh, thanks, you know, or it would be through you and I are musically connected. So a lot of times my faith, you know, like God speaks to me through music. There have been times and I'm like, I just need a sign, like just show me a sign I'm not alone. and I might be listening to something on Pandora or whatever, where it's not a playlist, it's just random. And like some random song that they don't play in that playlist pops on. And it's just the message I need. And whether you believe or not, I do. And that's all that matters. And that resonates for me. And it gives me that peace and serenity to know I'm not alone. I'm not alone on the spiritual plane, physical plane, and I've got this.
Oh, you hit on so many really, really important pieces. And whether it, and we've discussed that being a spiritual person is really about believing in your own potential and your
Hmm.
own possibility and trusting that everything is working out for you. You just have to allow it.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful that you had brought up the idea of security. And, that was one of the conversations I had been having regularly in the early days of the pandemic, especially with people in my world who were like, how could they not do this? And how could they not do that? And everything that else was going on in the world
Yeah.
globally.
Yeah.
And I said, we are all running through the lens of safety. So our behaviors are all driven by our core values, and in safety, although we may not necessarily identify it, is kind of like a core driver. And I was speaking
Yeah.
with a friend of mine, and he is a very well respected, very involved police officer, doing some very interesting details, and he's seen different things. And I was like, in my perspective, we're all driven by the same thing. So
Yeah.
my compassion tells me I don't have to agree with what it is that you're choosing, the what of what you're doing, but why you're doing it is the same why I'm doing it. Right. And
Yeah.
so when we look at the experiences that we're going through, we may not understand or even can fathom what people are doing as a
Yeah.
result. But when we look at us as humans, as beings, that we're all driven by the desire to feel safe, and then layered in that is all the other values, all of our responsibilities, our experiences, our perceptions, and all those things. And so then, of course,
Hmm.
out pops a whole different what. I found that really fascinating. It really was a grounding point for me. And speaking of that, when you were talking about um, being grounded and turning to your spirituality and to your faith, regardless of who someone's talking to, or what they're talking to, or what whether they feel they're talking to themselves or outwardly, or the big you or whatever,
Yeah.
just having that faith that I just have to surrender to this moment
Yes.
and be
Yes.
willing to be
Yeah.
open to the next thing, because biologically your brain will delete anything that you don't believe. And so if I
Yeah.
don't believe that there's
Hmm.
possibility, then when it comes knocking on the phone, showing up in
Yes.
my life, on the radio, I'm going to miss it. And
That's
if
right.
you want to be able to catch the opportunities as they arrive, however you feel that they showed up in the world, you have to believe that it's possible. And so grounding
Hmm.
and really getting centered and reconnecting to what you truly have control over, which is your thoughts and your beliefs and your actions,
Right.
that will create the environment for just ease.
Yes.
Not easy, but ease. and
Yes.
and
Good
that's what I
distinction.
heard
Yeah.
in your story, that it wasn't easy, none of it was
Mm-mm.
easy, and
Mm-mm.
it was challenging, and you showed up to it. You continued to show up to it because you believed that you could. And
Yes.
I think that can be a really sticky point for a lot of people, a lot of women who may be listening to this podcast, that if you don't believe that you can, then the goal just gets further and further away, right?
That's it.
And
Yeah.
and the stuckness, trying to claw back to the life that once was, that could never be again, but there
Right.
you
Right.
are.
Right. Yeah.
And so I use the word faith in any version that you interpret it, right?
Yeah.
So having faith in yourself, having faith
Hmm.
in energy, in beings, in possibility, really makes it possible for you to move through the hot mess, right? I
Yes.
equate that with your your belief in yourself, and your capacity to do that is what makes you awesome.
Yeah.
And when you hold
Yeah.
on and I'm talking like you and the global you here, but
Right. Right.
you held on to that,
Mm.
and managed to create a life that honored your doerness, your go, your, the creative, the fascinations, and the, be there when you be where you want to be, when you want to be doing those things. You're still independent, you're still driven, you're still passionate, and you've found a way to align those pieces, by connecting fully to yourself and to that global energy. Oh,
Yeah.
it's fucking so great. It just like to observe it and
Yeah.
to know that it is, to see people experience that. It's such an inspiration, and it's such a beautiful testament to what is possible for just people living their lives, right? It's
That's it.
not like did anything extremely magical, and you flew to the moon and you got the big knowledge and you
That's
came
right.
back, and
Right.
just living your life.
Yeah.
And oh,
Taking a shower, getting an idea in the shower. That's when it happens.
okay, everybody, that's like the fourth time someone said that to me in the past day, and that's where I have all my ideas, right? So if you're a shower thinker, just know that it's usually
Yeah.
because you're in the process of, doing something completely unconscious, which gives
That's
your
right.
conscious mind all that time to so if you're not used to having epiphanies, creative moments, ahas, big, like, oh my god, ultra knowing, get in the shower
That's right.
and just start where you start, and don't think about what you're doing, and out will come something. So I said to my husband, I'm like, I need to write things down.
Hmm.
And so I write in this, I have a glass shower, so I write in the steam.
Yeah.
And
Oh, that's
then,
brilliant.
well, and then I have to run out of the shower to try to find paper. But then I first have to find my glasses because I can't fucking see. So it's a
You
joke.
need, you need like a dry erase that's good for the shower. There's your invention. Oh, and I just shared it with the entire freaking world. Oh well. But if anyone wants to create it, I'm gonna
Yes.
buy it. Just letting you know. That's absolutely true.
And I get all the tech. I'm sure there's an app that I could talk to and all that, but I have to write and think. Like
Yeah, me too.
that's how
I
I do
think
it.
as I'm writing. Yes. Yep. See? Brain couple. We're a
Brain
brain
couple.
couple.
Okay, Lisa. So there you are. You are literally at the top of the mountain, and like, ah, maybe on your knees. Who knows? Like for the visual, like you're there,
Yeah, yeah.
and you have accepted, and you have taken on, and you are open and willing to just allow your life to unfold and trust that it's going to do so in a way that really makes sense for you.
Yeah.
What happened? What magic transpired as a result of you allowing this alignment to take place?
I think what happened is I was able to let go of what I thought my life was supposed to look like. And I'm surrendering. I'm still in the process. I'm surrendering because we're always unfolding. But I'm
Mhm.
surrendering to the idea of the fact that I'm going to figure it out as I go along. That I don't have to have all the answers. And I need to have all the answers kind of girl. I needed to know what was on the exam in grad school before I got this exam so that I could study extra hard and get extra credit. So not knowing and living in that uncertainty of not knowing has been very challenging for me all my life. But my daughter helped me with that because I have no idea what's going to happen next. Ever. Ever. Is she going to come and interrupt our podcast with no clothes on? Like it could happen. You don't know. Like there's so much unpredictableness that she is a constant teacher. It's almost like she's like my sensei of like just like knocking me off my game. Like, okay, I'm great again. Nope, you're not. Oh, thank you, sensei. Thank you. You know?
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
on the beach and I want to look cool. Like, I don't have a perfect body by any stretch of the imagination, but like I can never look even cool. Like I see the women sitting down on the beach with their cocktail or, like their cool hat and the glasses. And I'm like my hair is a mess and, sand everywhere and whatnot. So she is my teacher for helping me stay in that uncertainty, trusting that everything's going to be okay every day, every day, every day. And if it's not okay, then it's okay. And that was the biggest lesson for me, that when there's nothing to fear, then there's nothing to fear. And facing her mortality I had to face the greatest fear that I think any mother could ever face. And that is losing a child. I was lucky. I was one of the lucky ones. I haven't lost her, but I have friends who have. And I watched it and I went to their funerals. And by facing our mortality or that of our loved ones, I think it kind of wakes you up to say, like, by the way, like there's a time limit on your life and you better get moving. Otherwise, you're going to miss it. Like you're going to miss out. And I don't like missing out on anything. So I think what happened next was I started doing counseling online. I did say a prayer again, even though I swear I never would. But I said I prayed for opportunities, and they came, and like you were saying, I was open. I said I don't care what it looks like. I just need to make money, and I want to do counseling. And I found a way to do it online. I've been doing that for almost 7 years now. And I wanted to do coaching again, because I did do coaching in my private practice as well. I had my own practice. I was marketing my coaching. Like I was starting to get into it, and then I had to shut it down. And I said, I really love my coaching practice. I want to do that again. And so I was open. And I also had a knowing that something big was coming. I have been feeling it. And I don't want to say like I knew there was going to be a pandemic. Like I'm like I knew it. Like, no, I had no freaking clue that we were going to be in shutdown, lockdown. But I did have a knowing for the past, I would say like 1.5 to 2 years before. I mean, a year before the pandemic. I'm like, I need to get ready. Like I've been nesting. Like I had this nesting energy, and I don't know how else to describe it. Like something big is coming, and I have to be prepared for it. I have to get ready somehow. Like I need to be preparing for something. Like I had that energy, and in February, right before, I mean, I know the pandemic started and that was in it, but we weren't aware of it yet. Our area in the United States, I'm in New Jersey, we weren't, informed about it yet. We were still going about our lives like nothing was wrong. I had this overwhelming urgency to do something different. And it was keeping me up at night. It was waking me up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And anybody who knows that, it's like, 3 o'clock, that hour, I would get up and I would journal. And I was like, what is it? What is it? And I thought it was just me being kind of like just impatient. Like, okay, the counseling thing's great, but it's not enough. But it was, I'm telling you, it was like the universe, like knocking on the door and saying, wake up, wake up, wake up. Come on. There's more, there's more, there's more. And I started signing up for different coaching things and Tony Robbins events and meeting people all over the globe who were doing things that I wanted to do. And again, those connections with my brain couples and soul sisters and brothers. And I started to wake up myself, my vision started waking up again, my vision. And I've had this vision all of my life, but it was almost like the universe is saying, okay, it's time. You're ready now. Let's go. And as I was doing that, the pandemic hit. And as soon as it hit, I'm going to tell you, it was horrible. And everyone's like, oh my God. But I was like, oh, phew, that's what it was. Okay, now I get it. Now
Right.
I get why I was feeling that way. And by the way, now it's feeding into all of my prepper energy, because I was like a closet prepper. Like I was like, oh, I get to kind of like tap into this kind of weirdness about myself, and I was all ready to go, and I was prepared, but not because, and I'm sure that my daughter again kind of helped me with that. Like I was in lockdown when we were in the hospital for 2 months. I was in lockdown for the first 4 years of her life when her immune system was not very strong, and a cold could have taken her out. And so it's almost like the universe prepared me all along. When you're 13, you're going to get some practice in suicidal, ideation and prevention. And then you're going to have a daughter. So you're going to learn how to do like prepping for emergencies and understanding, the mechanics of the immune system and pulmonary systems. Like what? And, here I am now being prepared for the next level. I think you mentioned the term, like I'm leveling up. I'm just leveling up. But this is really like, I believe I'm following what has been my life's calling all along. And I'm finally I shouldn't say finally paying attention. I've paid attention. I feel like this is the right time. My kids are getting older. They don't need me as much. I still am present to them, but they can entertain themselves. I don't need to be the hovering mom of a toddler. My daughter's health is better. I can spend more time on my business. It's not going to be all consuming, but I have the energy and the passion for it. And if I try to sit with my kids, my son's 14, daughter's going to, 12, soon to be 13, they're like, Mom, go away. And I'm like, okay, so that's not even the universe telling me to go away. Like, that's a clear message directly from my kids. Like, I don't need you very much anymore. And so all of that to say, it's just the right timing. I'm trusting my inner knowings, and I'm ready to level up.
Awesome. So what specific, tell us what you've actually created that I get to be a part of, which I'm pretty pumped about.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
I know that you have a number of things going on, but this is happening. This is happening now. So tell us about that.
It's happening now.
It's happening now.
Oh my God. So I put together a conference called Divine Prosperity, Secrets to Creating Fun and Freedom in Your Business. Notice the word fun in there. And yes, and I created this conference to bring entrepreneurs from all over the globe. There are people from all over who are people that I can resonate with, who are they're leaders in their own industries, and everyone's doing something a little bit different, but they're all tapped into either their own spirituality or their own knowing of their following their life's calling and doing it unapologetically and doing it powerfully, and I wanted to just put something out there to the world, which is really something I needed. I think a lot of times we create what we need, right? Yeah. And I've learned that it's like people think, oh, you're the expert. I'm like, no, I really actually need this, which is why I'm creating it for you. But I want connection. I want connection with other global leaders who are thinking the way I'm thinking, who are wanting to influence the world in a positive way using the positive psychology and epigenetics and metaphysics, all the things we've talked about, and influencing the world so that we can just make this massive shift. Because I really believe with all of my heart that we are in a major paradigm shift right now. And I want to be a part of it. I don't want to miss the party.
Yeah.
So I'm doing this conference. It's 21 days. And it's an email pre-recorded conference. Why? Because of ease, like you were saying. Yes. I want it to be fun and I want it to be easy. And so I want people to be able to use this conference as a way to kind of ignite their own vision, recognize they're not alone, maybe learn some secrets. I've learned from every expert. I'm taking notes frantically afterwards, because I don't have the shower thing yet. I have to take notes on paper. And I'm taking notes about all the wonderful tidbits that we can all collectively gain wisdom from. So it's 21 days email every day. They get a new email in their inbox with another expert speaker video. And everybody's got a free gift too, because I'm all about the freebies. So each expert gives a freebie too. So you can just kind of start creating your business and creating new things in your business and start momentum right away.
I am so excited, and I'm so honored that I get to be a part of this amazing conference, this global shift. And you're right, it's happening. And so we all have a choice. We can
we do
delete, or we can be like open and aware and allow and really dive into this. And it's through this connective tissue that you're creating that so many amazing people are looking to create. That's where the shifts are going to happen. We can get really overwhelmed with like, what am I going to do? Whatever you can, and then connected to what the next person and the next person, this interdependence that we're creating globally is what's going to make a huge difference. So I'm so
so get on the party bus.
Yeah.
So feels like,
I will make whatever link available that I can to all of my people. And so you will definitely be able to access that and connect with Lisa if you're interested in learning more about her experience, any facet of it. So brilliant. So Lisa, before we pop off, what is one thing that you would love the listeners to walk away with today?
Great question. I would say the greatest thing is just trust yourself. Trust yourself and love yourself. We're so hard on ourselves so many times, and we think we're not doing it right. We're not doing enough, but just love yourself and trust yourself.
So brilliant. Thank you, my friend. Thank you for your time. And
Thank you. Thank
we'll
you.
see everybody really soon.
Thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed the show. Join Dion again next week to learn more about what you can do to go from hot mess to awesomeness.